for World for America. Without objection, that will be put in the record, and Senator Kaine is recognized.
Mr. McNally, you testified in your opening comments that we should be wary about any policies that disrupt the energy markets in oil and gas. What do you think is the advisability of the United States using sanctions against nations like Russia, Venezuela, and Iran on their energy sector?
Thank you.
For bad behavior.
Thank you, Senator Kaine. So tread very carefully. I think it's critical that when President Obama put sanctions on Iranian oil exports, he did so at a time at which U.S. shale oil production was surging. We were enabled really to contain oil prices while cutting off Iran's oil exports. And one of the reasons why the Russian oil disruption did not occur last year was the Biden administration, to its credit, recognized that the European sanctions could cause a loss of 3 million barrels a day of Russian supply, so they led in creating a price cap mechanism, an off-ramp, if you will, for those sanctions. With one of the goals of that was to avoid that catastrophic loss of Russian oil, high oil prices that would hurt the economy and possibly public support for Ukraine. So those are two instances where it came into play.
So your thought is there's no one-size-fits-all on sanctions, but just tread carefully if you impose sanctions on foreign nations' energy sector.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you for that. This is a question for Dr. Fulton, Ms. Fulton, and it's about pharmaceuticals. It's a little bit of a Virginia story. We're well aware of the devastating impact that natural disasters can have on access to life-sustaining medicine. Some of you have talked about some of the recent examples. In 2017, Hurricane Maria hit Puerto Rico. That exacerbated a saline solution shortage. 2018, wildfires in the western part of the country triggered N95 mask shortages, and then a number of you talked about the tornado destroying the Pfizer plant in North Carolina. That plant stored raw materials, packaging supplies, finished medications awaiting shipments to U.S. hospitals. Events like these stress the importance of diversifying supply chains. We can and should bring production of critical components closer to our shores. One disaster shouldn't be able to take down a supply chain, particularly a supply chain in an area as important as medical products and pharmaceuticals. That's why I was pleased that earlier this week, the Biden administration announced that Richmond, Petersburg, Virginia received a designation as a regional tech hub for advanced biotech manufacturing. I was selfishly excited about this because I helped create the Virginia Biotech Research Authority when I was a city councilman in the late 1990s. I served on its board as mayor. I appointed its board members as governor, and then I fought for the funding in both the American Rescue Plan and the infrastructure bill to help support this initiative. Can you discuss the importance of a federal investment in diversifying our medical product and prescription drug supply chain, and why is this sector so vulnerable to potential climate risks?
Yeah, Senator Kaine, thank you so much for the question, and congratulations on the new designation for the Richmond and Petersburg area. Medical products and pharmaceuticals are currently heavily reliant on overseas sources, many of which are in areas that are vulnerable to climate disruptions. The long transportation routes that these have to travel to get to the United States create challenges, especially when there are disruptions in global shipping. You asked about, why are they vulnerable? What can federal investments do? I think the lessons learned from the pandemic really underscore why we need this type of federal investment. You're going to create jobs through this, but it's also going to drive innovation and technological advancements, which is going to make things more efficient and cost-effective from production standards. It's important in creating robust, secure, and resilient medical and pharmaceutical supply chains, and reducing that reliance on the lengthy transportation routes.
Thank you. And Dr. Rose, a question for you, staying in the same space. I am the chairman of the Western Hemisphere Subcommittee of the Foreign Relations Committee, and I have been, with other colleagues in a bipartisan way, pushing the idea of more nearshoring of production closer to the United States. Obviously, if we can get it in the United States, that's great. But if we can get production of critical supplies in nations in the Western Hemisphere where we have trade agreements, where we're trying to help them grow their economies, I think that's all for the good. There are a number of steps underway to do that. The Vice President is working with nations to try to build more supply chains there. The CHIPS manufacturing bill had an ability to do investments in chips production in the Americas to pull some of that back from China. Talk a little bit about and this is my last question, about the value of looking at nearshoring, bringing supply chains, if not completely back to the United States, at least back close to the United States in regions, in the region that is our neighbor, where we have trade agreements with virtually all the nations in the area.
Well, the first way it helps is it lowers transportation costs rather than bringing things all the way from China. Second, it improves the security of supply because you're dealing with friendly countries. Third, it helps improve relations with our neighbors. China is aggressively going throughout the globe, investing in many countries, and they're in our backyard, could be even more so if we don't fill that vacuum. And finally, I'd say it's one way, especially with Mexico, to help with the border crisis. Creating jobs in Latin America will slow immigration to the U.S.
Senator Johnson.
Hey, Mr. Chairman.